essay prompts. Here I've written down the essay prompts for the 2024 and 2025 Common Application. Um, Most of these are fairly similar, and they are quite similar to the UT Austin and Texas A&M Applied Texas general prompts. Let me pull that one up as well. So if we're looking for UT Austin um, uh, essay prompts. These ones should all be fairly similar. Um, Here we go. So all freshman applicants must submit a required essay, which is the UT required essay, or it's topic A as listed in Applied Texas. Please keep your essay between 500 to 700 words, typically 2 to 3 paragraphs. This is this is fairly standard. The common application asks for, I believe, 650 approximately words. The essay that we will be reviewing today is 618 words. Um, for essentially all applications, like all yeah, this is just all of them. Every single uh, semester that you can be applying for admission into the University of Texas at Austin, they ask you to submit. Tell us your story. What unique opportunities or challenges have you experienced throughout your high school career that have shaped you, that have shaped who you are today? So here, this is what we call a YU essay. This is an essay that the university asks you why they should admit you. And there are a few other prompts. For example, the summer fall, for example, you can have these short answers where they ask you to be more in depth. Why are you interested in this major? You indicated as your first choice major. So this is like why your major. This is like its own specific category. I feel it's separate from why this university, why this major can be general, and you can apply it to various different universities. But of course, if you write a why UT Austin essay, you cannot really parlay that into a why USC or a why A&M essay, especially for those. You want to keep those essays separate. Another one, describe your experiences, perspectives, talents, and or involvement in leadership activities um, that will help you to make an impact both in and out of the classroom while enrolled at UT Austin. This is a subset of the YU essay, which is like it's YU, but strictly speaking about your leadership activities. So like what kind of volunteering did you do? Did you lead any clubs? Did you win anything interesting while you were doing this? Do you run anything competitive or was it something non-competitive? All of these are appropriate things that you can write about for this essay. Um, and you don't need to write a whole lot for it. So you should be able to keep it condensed. You shouldn't be worried too much about about these prompts specifically. It's more the first prompt, topic A, that's going to be reviewed by the admissions officers. The core purpose of the University of Texas at Austin is to transform lives for the benefit of society. Please share how you believe your experience at UT Austin will prepare you to change the world after you graduate. So this is a squirrely one. Um, the reason why is because this is also a why UT Austin essay. This is a why this university. Um, so you can kind of play with it as you will. Um, Change the world, transform lives for the benefit of society. This you can read up on some UT Austin admissions brochures to see what kind of language they use with respect to this. If there's any particular language that they want to see, that may be useful. And then this short answer, the extenuating circumstances essay can be written as well. Let's see. Um, I don't believe anyone is applying in the spring semester. I think you should all be applying in the fall unless there's something weird going on. Um, anyone expecting, this is a good question. Anyone expecting to go to community college and transfer? Are there any potential transfer applicants here? Okay, good. Makes my life a little bit easier. The transfer process is very complicated. It's very difficult. It's a very difficult process to transfer into these universities. But if you were, um, they are going to ask you for different essays. They're going to ask you for a much stronger academic profile. You should effectively get almost perfect grades in your community college to be competitive, even for UT Austin, like not including Ivy Leagues or any other fancy school. Even just state schools, they are expecting a very high degree of academic fortitude. So that's really the main priority for these applications, not really the essays. The essays you can write them. They may say yes, they may say no, but really the academic profile is what they're going to be looking for, especially at a school like UT Austin. We can also look at A&M. So here, freshmen are expected to write for Texas A&M admissions. Um, Kind of the same thing, I feel. Here's the essay. Uh, Again, the same thing that UT Austin was asking for to tell us your story. So the why you essay, and Texas A&M has no additional short answer responses. So if you are applying to Texas A&M and UT Austin, you can, um, frankly, you can reuse your essay. I actually would encourage you to reuse this essay because that is effectively what it's supposed to be. This is the common app essay. This is the common one that you're supposed to submit. So the same essay can be submitted to UT Austin, Texas A&M, UT, any of the other UTs, for example, um, and any others in the Texas system. So now that I've kind of gone into like the schools, the potential schools that you'll be applying to, and the essay prompt that they're asking, now we can talk about what the essay actually is. So, like it said, the essay is going to be around 500 to 700 words. Um, Here, the Common App gives you a guide. I have one in English and in Spanish. That's kind of like telling your story and giving some insights as to what you should be thinking about when you're writing your essay. So here, the Common App essay instructions ask you what you want the readers of your application to know about you apart from your course's grade and test scores. You have 7 prompts with endless possibilities to tell your story. Here are some ideas to inspire your thinking. And then they go into the various prompts that they ask. So the first prompt is probably, I think, the most aligned with what they're asking for in the Applied Texas Topic A essay. And you can just like the think about and ask yourself are not terribly instructive, I feel, because they're just like telling you like think about everything in your life, because that is kind of what you have to do. You do actually have to think about everything. You have to find some interesting anecdote, some interesting stories, some details about your life, um, certainly with respect to your academics if possible, but not necessarily related to your academics. Um, Such that this will provide a deeper, deeper insight into your character, into your personality for admissions officers, and it's something that will make you really stand out in the table read. So the way that these readings work is that admissions officers are flown in to the university for a few weeks, sometimes months, depending on how big the university is. And they have their iPads pulled up, and they have a very long list of applicants that they are assigned to. They're usually assigned these geographically as well. So if you're applying to Princeton uh, and you're applying from Texas, you will be competing, better put, you will be read against other Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma-ish students. So those are all the students that the same admissions officer will be reading you for. So because of that, you can kind of get a sense as to what's going to be expected, what this officer is probably going to be reading a lot of, because in a single geographic region, like some things are more popular than others, for example. I don't know if y'all have seen this, but the SAT and ACT geographies kind of look like this. where we have more SAT takers in the orange regions and then more ACT takers in the bluer regions. So this just kind of show that like there are geographic differences in students' behavior and the things that students submit that are predictable over time. So like knowing that, if you know kind of what the geographic trends are for whatever region you're in, so we're all applying from Texas, um, you want to think about, going against the grain if possible, doing things that are not necessarily expected of your region. I feel particularly successful in my applications because Model UN in Texas is not very well developed. The Northeast, for example, the West Coast, this is where Model UN is really strong, where all the top teams are, where all the competitions are. So coming out of Texas, doing it and being successful is a green flag. It is like, oh, okay, this is not just like, oh, an impressive thing on a resume, but it's also something that is not going to show up in other applications from this geographic region. Something to think about if you want to like game this out. Um, but anyways, going back to the prompt itself, you can take a look at this further on your own time. I don't think there's anything super crazy that they say in here. It is just kind of a generic introduction of like, oh, okay, like thinking about, say, if you describe a topic, idea, or concept that you find so engaging and makes you lose track of time, why does it captivate you? I probably wouldn't write this prompt simply because you can't reuse it for the UT Austin and A&M topic A's. It's not, it doesn't, like, it's just not the same topic. So you would need to choose another idea, I feel. Maybe you could contort it, but just keep it the same. Keep it the same. So now we're going to get into an essay that worked. This is a common application essay. Um, let's see. Um, Can I get someone to read this yellow highlighted portion? I can read it myself. Um, so this is the hook of the essay, the introduction. Um, some important things to note about the introduction is that they are almost always anecdotal. They always typically include some story that you tell about yourself, something that you've experienced. Um, and then you can transition into personal reflection. This essay in particular, I feel is very well structured. The structure is very clean. It's a very easy structure to replicate. Um, and having this kind of a structure doesn't necessarily make you like, it doesn't necessarily make it a better, more competitive essay. But what it does is that it makes it more well structured for the readers to evaluate because they can kind of like jot down like where it is that you're doing all your connections, where you're making all your ideas, and then how you're presenting them in this kind of like slow, methodical way. Other people write in different ways. This is not the only way to write a Common App essay. In fact, there's tons of ways to write a Common App essay, and some of them you may like more than others. Um, so we're gonna get started on this one. The first lesson I learned as a student pilot is that left and right don't exist. Maybe driving on a highway or in a parking lot, left and right is precise enough to describe the location and movements of slow-moving bikers, pedestrians, and cars. But at 36,000 feet in the air in a steel tube hurtling at almost 200 miles an hour, left and right just don't cut it. During one of my first flights in a small Cessna 182, my flight instructor ordered me to scan the horizon for approaching aircrafts. To my right, I caught a glimpse of one, another Cessna with maroon stripes, the sun's reflection glinting off its windows. Gesturing vaguely to my 2 o'clock, I informed my flying instructor, "There's a plane to the right." "No, to your right. From his position, what direction does he see you?" From his angle, I was to his left. In that moment, I realized that perspective and precision of language is everything. The radio chirped, Cessna 182 Sandra heading north to John Wayne Airport. Over. I navigate using my compas's north, east, south, and west directions because every pilot's vantage point differs from each other both vertically and horizontally, creating opposite perspectives. My right was that pilot's left. Does anyone have any initial thoughts about this hook? Anything that they liked, anything that stood out for them, anything that they didn't like? I see a lot of people talking, but they're all muted. Hablan. Maybe some things that stood out um, for parents. Maybe we can start with parents. I'll look at the chat in a second. Note here that there is minor rich text formatting options in these kinds of essays. So previously, essays used to be typed up on typewriters, um, and so you only had access to the words and the page break, into the paragraph breaks. But now, because essays are submitted online, you can have bolding, underlining, and italics. So here, italics are very commonly used for conversational emphasis. You want to be writing in a natural conversational tone in your essay while still sounding professional. So the way that people tend to do this is that they will use use in italics to emphasize parts of a sentence without being overbearing. It's like whether these emphases really matter. And here, the emphases all are in all of the italics and all of these emphases are in really the most important line of the hook. No, to your right. From his perspective, what direction does he see you? This is like a very explicit statement of the thesis of this paper of this essay. Here, like the student is being posed with the opposing information, with the question, and they are now going to respond to it. This is what's going to be the remainder of the essay. So this is a very effective sentence to include in the hook. Um, Having a little bit of dialogue is always nice if possible, if your structure allows for it. Sometimes dialogue doesn't work very well, like the anecdote just doesn't work out. It really is if you can make it flow the best. Let's see. What is the prompt? This is the same prompt that we've been talking about. This is prompt A. So these students, um, for example, these students, the way that it works is that you don't really write with a prompt. You just write. You write and write and write, and you write at some point maybe dozens of essays, dozens of prompts. Not all the way through, of course. You don't necessarily write 12 times 700 words. But what you do is that you do attempt to write as many essays as possible with as many different ideas as possible, pulling from prompts. And then if you have one that you really like, you just paste a prompt to it, because you're allowed to choose whichever prompt you want. So for example, number 7 is quite literally just share an essay of any topic of your choice. And this is the one that I did. So you can just kind of design your own thing, something that's like personally that you feel is personally creative. Um, okay, let's so this is the hook. This yellow portion is the hook. The red is the turn of the essay. So this not every essay necessarily has a turn, but if you're writing about multiple things, which this essay is, it talks about first it introduces us to flight school, and then it gets us to talk about journalism. So you need a small bit in this essay that changes your topic. It shouldn't just be one sentence. It should maybe with just one sentence, but that I feel that's a bit much. So this was two sentences, and I feel that is appropriate. I think that a two sentence turn is appropriate for these essays. Through flying, I began to consider all points of view, regardless of my personal perspective. Perhaps it was my ability to scan the horizon to communicate a single story, uniting contrasting outlooks that drew me to my love for journalism and the diverse melting pot that was my community. So here we have now turned to the subject of community, the people, from what was a fairly impersonal opening. The opening was just you and an instructor, and then now we're going to talk about a bunch of people. So this actually gives a very nice literary contrast as well, of like kind of like you are metaphorically slash literally broadening your horizons. You're now like you started talking with one person and now you're talking with more people. It's like a these are subtle tricks that you can put in an essay that just make it read nicer to an admissions officer. To me, journalism modernizes the ancient power of storytelling, filled with imperfect characters and intricate conflicts to which I am the narrator. As editor-in-chief for my school's newspaper, The Wildcat's Tale, I'm to share the uncensored perspective of all students and encourage my editorial groups to talk and listen to those with whom they disagree. Starting each newspaper edition with the Socratic Roundtable's discussion, I asked the other journalists to pursue stories that answer the questions. Why did this happen, and where will it lead? So in this paragraph, we have a shout out to something that it says the school's newspaper, which is nice, because this is also useful for a reader who is flipping back and forth from your resume and your essay. So after you've already cleared the hurdle of the GPA and SAT, ACT requirements, which are not the ones that are posted on the website necessarily, um, your activities list will be read from the common application, and your first essay will be read. In the case of A&M, there's only one essay, so that's the one that they're going to read. And this could be submitted for that as well. And if you have like, oh, I was editor-in-chief of my school newspaper, The Wildcat's Tale, it's going to be an easy thing for them to see on your resume and say like, okay, this is there. The important thing is that you want to balance this. You don't want to just be talking about things that you already have on your activities list because now you're wasting space. The whole point is that you're able to introduce something new about you. You want to add something. Do you want to enhance your application? You don't just want to reiterate your application. So the discussion of the flying a plane, for example, most likely, and you'll see this in the admissions committee comments, I believe, I don't have access to the student's application file, but I'm pretty sure that they did not include this in their activities list. So the whole discussion of being a student pilot was at best a supplemental detail of their application that is now takes the place of the entire hook. So wonderful strategy. So now we've connected the Cessna and flying a pilot to a fairly not a I wouldn't say mundane activity at the school, but it's not like a super flashy one, right? You're just editor-in-chief of your school newspaper. Solid position to be in. But it's like okay, it's just like we're at a good spot right now. It's later that they actually also make sure to include some really fancy stuff. I began writing articles for the Korea Daily and later the Los Angeles Times High School Insider. I scheduled interviews with city council candidates, young and old voters, and mayors of my town, obtaining quotes and anecdotes to weave into my writing. My interviews with those Democratic and Republican voters have taught me to thoroughly report polarizing opposite opinions through an unbiased lens. As a journalist, I realize I cannot presume the opinions of the reader, but instead simply provide them with the tools necessary to formulate their own conclusions. So here, quite literally, we talked about at the initially that left and right don't exist, that that uh, direction is perspective, and then now we're talking about political perspectives, a political left and right. Cute, works, definitely effective. It's maybe you may feel it might be a bit obvious, or maybe even a bit cheesy, but it works, and especially if they're someone who's interested in journalism or are interested in the humanities, this makes perfect sense. You have to be like this is the kind of language and the kind of thinking that admissions officers want to see. They don't want to see a partisan. They want to see a journalist. They want to see someone who's listening to people and someone who's listening to different perspectives, because that's the whole point of university. Mm. In the blue paragraph, however, differences in perspectives in my articles are not solely limited to politics. So now we've now transitioned in, like, we're fully in the journalism swing, and we're even expanding from the fact that we're involved in politics. We're gonna get personal. We're gonna get homey. This is the homey paragraph of this essay that I really like. I found that in my suburban community, people love to read about the small town hospitality of their own friends and neighbors. Quirky traditions like our 4th of July Carnival Clown and local elementary school's Thanksgiving talent show are equally as important to me as national headlines are. My favorite stories to publish are the ones taped onto fridges, proudly flamed on the mom and pop downtown diner, or pinned into the corkboard in my teacher's classroom. I discovered the size of my story does not matter, but the impact I leave on the reader does. This is great. It's relatable. An admissions officer will absolutely have walked into a restaurant before and have seen a newspaper clipping raving about that restaurant pinned to the wall. It's a nice thing, and it's a very mature thing to point out in a college admissions essay, because a college admissions essay is, we think that it's just all preening, it's all fancy stuff, it's all just showing yourself off in university, but it's not. It is just showing your hobbies, and it's showing you as a person. How do you relate to people? How do you like understand the impact of your own work? And this person clearly does understand the impact of their own work. And they made it clear, not just in the fact that in the green section that they were like, this is them themselves, like, oh, I'm so cool, I'm such a cool journalist, but also what I do and what I put out there matters to people. Solid, very solid. And then we conclude in the pink paragraph. In my time as both a student pilot and journalist, I grew to love these stories. The one that showed me that living life with blinders can not only be boring, but dangerous. Whether I was 36,000 feet in the air or on ground level, by flying and writing, I realized the most interesting stories of life come straight from the people most different from me. Pardon. So, any thoughts on this essay? Any comments?
I really liked how he started with his experience about pilot and ended up showing his passion for journalism.
Hmm. Yeah. And the admissions committee thought so as well. Her, by the way. This a girl wrote this. It's a very beautiful essay. Mm. This is her personal reflection on it. I chose to write about my two favorite hobbies, flying and writing, because I knew I could write most honestly about what I love to do. This essay captured my thinking process and captured a creative approach to seemingly everyday tasks and situations. Rather than writing what I assumed the Hopping submissions team would be impressed with, I learned to focus on writing an essay that captured my personality. It was challenging, yet rewarding to write in my natural conversational voice while still remaining professional. What school did she get accepted into? Johns Hopkins. She is sophomore, I believe. Yeah, Stella's a sophomore here. There are many of these. So if you go to JHU essays at work, for example, JHU is great, not just because, I mean, great school. I like going to it, but also because they show you they have a huge amount of essays at work that you can sort through. I think that this is much more effective than going onto College Confidential or going to Reddit for your college essay stuff, because on those forums, people are just like getting way too wrapped up into these bizarre theories and details about what they think that an essay should include. it's not that deep. It really, really is not as deep as any of these people are saying. Like the essays, you just you're just writing about yourself. It really is as simple as that. You shouldn't overcomplicate it. Mm. So here we have a whole bunch of different essays that work. There's one that talks about entropy. This one seems like pretty fancy to me. I think maybe me, I think she's a biomedical engineer. I think she's my major actually. I've never seen her. But yeah, I believe she is a biomedical engineer. So let's see. Entropy is a property that provides the basis for the second law of thermodynamics, which states that the universe naturally gravitates towards disorder. Its explanation comes from the idea that the universe prefers to conserve energy. Because energy must be put into organization, everything around us is constantly descending into an increasingly complex state of chaos. Cheerful, I know. While it may seem like a concept worth forgetting, especially with its conviction about an imminent universal heat death, entropy has taught me far more outside of the classroom than in it. I, unlike the universe, have never been a very big fan of disorder. Admittedly, I worship the planner in my backpack. Hate it when I have to have more than 3 unread emails, and I'm the designated pantry organizer of my household. I arrive dependably at school every morning half an hour early and mastered the art of Mary Kondo's file folding for each of my closet drawers. I fall in love with the idea of becoming a surgeon to dedicate my career to putting back together what has been broken, ordering the disorderly, and every organizational habit I have developed has been a microcosm of that passion. However, life is often more unpredictable than might allow a color-coded spreadsheet to double as a crystal ball. When I am faced with a group discussion in which conflicting ideas create more questions than answers, or when I'm rushing from track practice to a robotics meeting worried about what to fit my homework in, I remind myself of the importance of entropy. For a system to be considered at equilibrium, entropy must actually be at its maximum. In order to be stable, everything must be marginally out of control. This applies to just as much to life as it does to chemistry. The best stories I've written don't start with an outline, but with random phrases I jotted down in a notebook in a moment of epiphany. My favorite chemistry classes were exponentially disastrous as they progressed, teaching me more about error analysis than acids and bases. My most memorable class periods were the ones that started with the lesson plan, followed the curiosity of the class, taking us anywhere from the taxonomy of mermaids to hiking horror stories. Entropy is also a measure of the changes in the status quo of a system. The most unpredictable the outcome of a reaction, the higher its entropy value. Although I love my orderly desktop and pre-prepared Spotify playlist for any mood, I embrace copious entropy and all that it represents, because I too want to be unexpected in a world that expects the status quo. I want to defy predictions and make world-changing discoveries, increasing my entropy as my impact tends limitlessly towards infinity. Though I don't expect it to be easy and may occasionally enlist the help of my planner and about a million colored pens, I take comfort in knowing that my intention to excel as a woman in STEM and a young adult dystopian novelist pleases the universe. A high entropy value increases the chances for both failure and success. It is both a natural way of the world and the primary supplier of chaos. I welcome both with open arms, through chaos and failure still scare me. Now, when I am the only one in my class with a particular opinion on our book, or I'm stressed about the copy of a busy schedule, I'll take a deep breath and recognize the potential to thrive in it. I am supposed to exist in chaos. I can venture into uncharted territory and comfortably embrace the positive that lies in the unknown, sure that when the entropic feeling inexorably takes over and life gets messy, I will be ready. To feel out of control is not the end of the world, but the natural state of it. Quirky, fancy, very fancy. I actually tried to write an entropy essay myself. I hated it. I thought it was so bad. I thought it was such a hokey theme to use. But this student actually kind of nailed it. And to be able to do these is very difficult because you have to know what entropy is. You actually you have to know the science of entropy. I don't know. Mm. I theme I see between these two essays that they have an underlying theme throughout while also selling themselves. How do you recommend choosing the right theme or anything at all? Terrific question. There's no good answer for it. It really is write as try as many themes as possible and see which one sticks. That's like the big preparation and the work that you have to put in. The vast bulk of your time when you're writing these essays is going to spend trying out different themes. Some themes are going to sound great on paper. Some things are going to sound terrible on paper, but you will only know if they work out once you write them. At least attempt the hook, turn, and then a bit of the action. So here, for example, like using entropy in this way, you also like I said, you have to know what you're talking about. For a system to be considered at equilibrium, entropy must actually be at its maximum. And then you have to like think about like, okay, what does it mean for entropy to be at its maximum? What does it mean for that? Like, what is the relationship between that and my life? Huh? Like these are not obvious. These are not obvious things. Like this is certainly not an obvious thing for people to think about. Um, and it doesn't need to be quirky like this. Like you saw previously, like different perspectives. That was all it was. And they just like found fun examples for that. So you don't have to be crazy about it. You don't have to be like, writing about freaking thermodynamics. But like, especially if you're a STEM student, though, this is kind of like this works. My essay had nothing to do with STEM. I briefly mentioned it, but it was mainly about my music composition and how I related to that, overcoming a personal struggle. So here, this person talks more about like, oh, their need to embrace the chaos and the bizarreness of the world, while they try to wrangle it together as much as possible. Also, a good thing to convey to a college audience, like to a college admissions audience. The admissions officers want to admit people who will do well at university. They want to admit people who will like think in a way that will cause them to not break down because of bad grades or because of, or obstacles that they may face academically at university, especially at a university like Johns Hopkins or at other top institutions. um, you are probably were the top student or one of the top students at your high school. High school was probably quite easy for you academically. So when you get to these schools, school ain't easy anymore. And the university wants to know whether you will, learn from that, grow from that, succeed, or whether you'll crash and whether this is not a good fit for you. So an essay like this makes for a pretty compelling case to sell yourself and to show that like I can handle the chaos.
Alejandro, excuse me, there is a question in the chat. Thank you.
I believe I already answered it. That was my answer for it.
Sorry. Thanks.
So for me, my theme was overcoming perfectionism. It was a thing that um, was very difficult for me to overcome because when I started middle school at Seven Lakes Junior High. And I don't know if anyone here went to Seven Lakes Junior High, or like knows people from there. But certainly when I was there, it was extraordinarily competitive. Um, I know Isabel was kind of terrified when I showed up for my first Info for College session because I already knew all my colleges, had all my courses sketched out, had, a roster of like 16 APs to take. And that was like, it wasn't just me being crazy. That was standard amongst my friends and colleagues. It just was the way it was. In sixth grade, people were already sitting down talking about their 6 and 7 year plans for all of their coursework, the different contingency plans based on different majors that they could possibly take and other classes that they could sort into different slots and sophomore, junior, or senior year, such that they have the necessary credits to get into like not just to get into the university, but also to be ahead in the major once they were at the university. This environment, like, sure, it certainly made me a bit more competitive, but it was also horrible. It was beyond horrible. It was extraordinarily taxing. Um, and it terrified me as a child. Certainly that like if I'm not up to snuff, if I'm not thinking about this all the time and doing it the best I can, I have no shot. And it took me a long time to rid myself of that feeling. It took a long time for me to um to really understand and self-reflect on that, on the fact that I don't need to be so concerned about that. I don't need to be perfect. I don't need to be the one like I don't need to be, doing all this all the time and to be doing it perfectly every time. Mistakes are okay. The setbacks are totally fine. Other people's opinions really just don't matter all that much. And I was able to find that through composition. In composition, there's no such thing as a perfect piece. I can in a violin performance, for example, I can't, there is like, okay, like this is like you played this, you played every single note right, you played it with like a distinct interpretation. This is solid. This is like a great performance. But with composition, the difference between a great piece and a not so great piece is far more fuzzy because you've made something, you've created something. The analysis of it, the analysis of this creative process is far less judgmental than any other, and certainly less judgmental than anything going on in academics, where you have a test and you have to, you score a certain percentage on it. So because of that, it was through my involvement in composition that I was able to finally rid myself of uh, that sense of perfectionism, and that's what I wrote about in my essay. Um, I thought that that was an appropriate theme, and certainly the admissions officers at Johns Hopkins, and Columbia, and Rice, and various other schools thought that it was a good enough essay to admit me. A lot, a lot. If you have, if you've made it past the bar, if you've made it, um, if you made it say okay, um before I answer that question, Alonso, say like what universities are you considering? What would you say are like your reach and your like target? The reason, okay, so UMich UMich not as much. UMich not as much because it's a big school. It's a big school. So for very large schools, the good essay is useful, but I don't think that useful. Like it's not as useful as a small school because at a small school they really do read your essay and they really care about it. Like the admissions officers, I had some. My partner goes to Williams. He was admitted uh, as a transfer student, and there the dean of admissions knew his essay, had read it, and talked to him about it when he arrived on campus. That is not happening at UMich or UT Austin or any other state school. Like that just doesn't happen because it's a consequence of it being a very small school, a very small community. So your good essay weighs a lot more. Like having a good essay is really important for those schools. And like your grades matter less. At large institutions, UT Austin, UMich, a bit less. The essay is not quite as important, but it is fundamentally like one of the three pillars of your application: your standardized testing scores, your high school GPA, and your essay, your primary essay, your Common App essay. The short answer, the little extra fluff doesn't matter that much. So you don't have to worry about that too much. Make it nice, certainly, especially if you're applying to Stanford, because they do read those. The short answers of Stanford matter a lot. Um, the main essay is what matters the most. So these three are how you get admitted. School of Mines, yeah, a bit more. Definitely School of Mines and Air Force, absolutely. Definitely for the Air Force Academy. Air Force is weird. I'm more familiar with Navy. I live in Baltimore, so Annapolis is pretty close by. We have the Naval Academy near here. From what I know about that process, the students are asked, like the essay that they are supposed to write, the students just generally get in. That's not like a super huge concern. Um, Sticking around is the harder part. Sticking around tends to be the harder part for those military schools. So I feel for you, like of these schools, School of Mines is where you like want to get it right. For the other ones, they definitely do still matter, but um if you're a senior, just like dedicate yourself to the essay. You don't need to worry about this. But if you're a junior, focus more on your coursework. Focus more on your coursework and your extracurricular so you can have like nice, pretty things on your resume. Your activities list matters a lot to military academies. This I know. Your activities list, I feel, matters around just as much as your essay. They read your essay, they like it, but like they also do care about the cool stuff on your resume. Not as much at Ivy Leagues, for example, because there everyone has cool stuff on their resume. Everyone's an international scholar or whatever. So like you have to balance it out more with the kind of personable stuff of the essay. Anyone else have any like university aspirations and like want specific feedback as to like how they should approach your essay? Thank you for your questions, Alonso. Very, very good questions. Texas State. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it too much. Texas State, and the other local, say TCU as well. Okay, so like Texas State, TCU, Baylor. Um, Let me see. Yeah, yeah. I group those schools. Texas State. Wait, is Texas? Wait. Let me make sure I'm not confusing things. Yeah, so Texas State is fully public. Um, so Texas State, um, I mean, you're you're gonna be fine. They have an 88% acceptance rate. I don't think you should be too concerned about the essay. Like submit it. If you have the grades, you have the grades, you have like cool stuff on your resume, write whatever you want in your essay. So long as you're not writing anything crazy, like you'll be fine. University of Houston. Same thing. Same thing. I believe the UH admissions is kind of the same. 66%, worry a bit more, put a bit more effort into it. Um, yeah, yeah, that's what I'd say. Um, both of these are public universities, so the I think again activities list, a nice activities list, matters around like just slightly less than a good essay. So like you for these schools, like they're not necessarily gonna look for like you talking about entropy or like all these like really I don't know this fancy one about what Greek classics, gender dynamics, Caesar and Virgil. Like it doesn't need to be so fancy like that, unless you want to do classics, right? Unless you want to do this stuff, unless this stuff really like matters to you, then you should absolutely go for it. Also, this essay is I should mention this essay is not the Common App essay. This essay you can tell is a lot shorter. It fits all in one window, and that's because this is the Johns Hopkins supplemental essay. The supplemental essay is a combination of why you and why Hopkins. So like why you and why Hopkins that needs to be put into the same essay. This is a solid supplemental, like it's a solid supplemental prompt to practice with. I'll show it to you. Tell us an aspect about your identity or a life experience that has shaped you as an individual and how that influenced what you'd like to pursue in college at Hopkins. This can be a future goal or experience that is either academic, extracurricular, or social. So right there, these are questions that like will be asked at other universities, at other short answers, and it gives you a solid way to practice. Like you can just change Hopkins to whatever you want. You can change Hopkins to TSU or UH or Baylor or what have you. Like you can just swap this out and then you can practice with that, and that will give you a solid way to practice a why you plus why this university essay. Would you recommend personalized essays for, let's say, the top 3 schools on your list that are more specific to the school if they ask for them? If they ask for them. So like A&M, for example, A&M only asks for the common essay. So if A&M is in your top 3, you don't need a personalized essay for it. It's just there. You should like, if you're writing, let's say, I don't know, how many schools do you plan on applying to? Is it just those that you wrote, or do you think there's gonna be more? Because I can give strategies for high volume. 8 max, oh then no problem. Write all of your essays personalized. Yeah. Like write all of your essays for every single school. And then use the common across as the application is gonna ask you for. Like it's gonna submit them to all of them. So you that is built in to be the common. You don't want to have different common essays. Just use the same one. You don't need that kind of effort. If is anyone here planning on doing 15 or more applications? Good. I did not do 15 or more applications, but a lot of my friends did 15 or more applications. And there they have like their own fancy strategies of managing and like cutting and pasting certain details of their essays between them and like making these bizarre Frankenstein homunculi of their previous essays to make new essays. There's like a whole fancy art to it, but none of y'all will need to know how to do that. That would be like an extra class on making like a lot of essays, and there's no need for that. If you have an idea for a theme, but it seems common overused, is it worth writing? If you nail it, if you nail it, you got to get it right. If it's something that's cliche, then you have to do a creative spin on it, right? Like, I don't know, La La Land wasn't terribly creative in the idea of it, like, whoa, unrequited love, crazy theme, to put in a movie. But they did it in such a nice, stylistic, and cute way that it won Oscars and it won Oscar nominations. So, like, you can do a trope, just got to do it well. It's kind of like this becomes like a very artsy question, right? Like you can make the cliche, but you got to get it right. Or you can do something that's really niche, but then you have to tell people what it is. Like if you're talking about entropy, right? If you're just pulling out entropy out of nowhere, you have to be able to sell the entropy. So sell a cliche, sell a niche theme, like things are worth writing if you get the style and the presentation right. Any other questions before we wrap up?
Okay, Alejandro, thank you. I think time is over. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge. Thanks for all the examples you gave us. So I have already the other students at 3:30 waiting. So thank you so much. Is there anything else? I don't know, as you said, students, yeah, I think everybody is very grateful. Thank you.
Much appreciated. Thank you very much for your time.